to let Watch My Legs speak. Thank you for waiting patiently, gang. Go ahead. The floor is yours. Give your take, give your insight on the topic.
What's up, gang? And what's up to the panel? Yeah, so man, it's a couple things I should have taken notes. So first off, I'm a straight man. I was raised Muslim, so it's definitely people in my family that have some ideas about LGBTQ. But luckily, my mother was always very open minded. I was in the arts since a young age, so I always had friends from that community. And one of the things that somebody, so you're talking about, okay, straight men not in testing. I know I got plenty of homies that are straight or they claim to be, and they don't get tested, and it's disgusting. And we have these conversations like, just if we talking about encounters, like dudes talk, right? And I'm like, oh, you didn't use a rubber? And they're like, no. Like, they look at me like I'm crazy for protecting myself. Now, granted, I'm in a relationship, I have a queen, but even then, we get tested. Even though we don't have to, we're not messing with other people, we get tested. It's just a routine for me. I've been doing that since I was young. I have somebody in my family that has HIV. So since I was young, I always just had that instilled in me. Like every 3 months, if I get a new partner, when I was single, I think there is an ignorance amongst straight men where they believe somehow that they can't get it because they're straight. They think that it's a gay disease, which is another ignorant thing. It's not true. Yes, it is harder for men to get it. Like my doctor even told me, she was like, if you're having, sex and you're going into a V, it is harder to contract it, but that doesn't mean that you can't get it. Like that's why even take that risk, right? So there's that. And when it comes to my sexuality, I actually had a friend that I grew up with, and I was angry at him because he was engaged to my ex-girlfriend. And in Islam, you can have like arranged marriages. So he got engaged to her, and I was pissed, and it didn't work out. And later on, I found out the reason it didn't work out because he was bi, and he really wanted to, live his life freely, but his parents wouldn't accept it. And I guess he just wasn't into her. He was into women too, but he wasn't into her. And so, that was one of those things that clicked for me like, oh, yeah, like that's a thing. I do believe that it is ignorance when, the man in the video is saying like these black women are the ones that's pushing DL men. But I do think in my experience, it's a lot of black men that instill that fear because they're worried about the judgment from their friends. He wouldn't be accept. Dudes would just call him gay. If he told them that he was bi, they would just call him gay and ostracize him for religious reasons, and just as far as a culture, it's just a lot of ignorance. Now, I think time is changing. I'm an 80s baby. I'm 35. So, back in the 90s, if you wore tight pants, you were gay, right? Like, that's just the kind of ignorance it was. So I understand that mentality, but it is ignorance, and it is something that a lot of people live in fear, and they don't want to be who they are because they're worried about their friends judging them, their family judging them, and maybe some women too. If they feel like if they came out to a woman and said that they were bi, that she would not date them, right? That is true. There is some truth to that, but I just hear a lot of it pains me because I hear a lot of rhetoric that I feel like is outdated, where now we have Google and Chat GPT. Like you could look up the statistics, right? You could look up the statistics, and you can be who you are. I think now more than ever, because I mean, you got what we have bisexual rappers. We have people that are famous actors that are like, it's not going to stop you from doing what you want. So the only thing would be insecurity. But let's not act like, that it's just all on black women. It's definitely rooted in I don't even know if I want to say toxic masculinity, but there is a stigma that comes along with that when you're a black man. And that's my take on it.
Let me
Big
ask you a
fact.
question. Let me ask you 1 second, Mr. Jones. Let me ask you a question again. Does a bisexual man exist in the black community?
They exist, but they're not accepted. Or maybe, I mean, few and far between, but if we're talking about at scale, most people would just call you gay.
And what
And from what I've seen.
what do you personally attribute to men being down low? Do you think it is a self-acceptance issue for the most part, or do you think it is a, like the man in the audio was saying, woman not providing a safe space and black woman not really being accepting and acknowledging of these bisexual men?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard women say that they would never date a bi man. I've heard bi women. That's what's really funny. I've heard bi women say they would never date a bi man. I'm like, well, but you're black and you want them to accept you. But that, I mean, it is what it is, right? But then there was a whole trend on TikTok. One of my friends was in it. I was surprised because she's somebody that I would think would never date a bi man. And she literally posted a video, and it was this whole viral trend of black women saying, where are the bi men? That they're into that. So,
I
like I
remember
said,
that.
you remember that, right? So we are living in a different time, and that's what I'm saying. Like just because I'm old enough to see when it was, you know, you you couldn't even dare tell somebody. Where now I think you at least have some sense of community where you're not going to be alone. You know what I mean? And if people do come at you, there is a level of protection. Not saying that there's not violence against LGBTQ people, but I think we just at a point where you have a little more versus the 90s or the early 2000s, like what I could remember when I was finding out some of my friends were that had to hide it. You know,
Go ahead, Mr. Jones. Go ahead, Mr. Jones.
I didn't have anything to add, but I think Legs wanted to speak, so I think we should let her go.
Okay. Okay. Hey, thank you, gang. Okay, Leg.
absolutely.